Hello everyone and welcome back to the coverage of the Sousse Interzonal tournament of 1967, mainly from Bobby Fischer's perspective. We have 2 games left before we wrap it up, and then we are going to discuss everything that happened and why Fischer never finished this Interzonal tournament. So here he faces Colombian international master Miguel Cuellar Gacharna, if I'm pronouncing that well. Really strong player, as all of Fischer's opponents are really strong. But to give you an idea, he was Colombian national champion 9 times. He represented Colombia 6 times in the Chess Olympiad, and he defeated some of the great names of the era, like Samuel Reshevsky, Viktor Korchnoi. He defeated Yevhen Geller. He defeated Kavalek. He defeated many other players. He even drew world champion Tigran Petrosyan in a year after this game was played. He wasn't he drew against Petrosyan in the Stockholm Interzonal tournament of 1962. So it was 5 years before this game was played, and it wasn't. Petrosyan wasn't world champion at the time. He got his World Chess Championship match next year where he won. And he was world champion from 1963 to 1969, where he was defeated by, of course, you know who, and then someone defeated you know who. I don't have to tell you guys have incredible vast knowledge, but yeah, I just wanted to point out how strong Miguel was. And we have the seemingly the Magnus effect some many years before Magnus Carlsen was even born, but only in those days he was called the Fischer effect. So let's see what happens here. Miguel with white opens with pawn to d4. Bobby replies with knight to f6. We have pawn to c4 and pawn to c5. Fischer goes for the Benoni defense, and we have pawn to d5, advancing the pawn as one usually does. e6, we have knight to c3, e captures on d5, c captures, and pawn to d6. Again, all very standard. This is the so-called modern variation. Knight to f3, pawn to g6, and pawn to e4. We have bishop to g7, and now comes bishop to g5. Nowadays, other moves are more popular, like bishop to e2 or h3, but bishop to g5, and now pawn to h6. We have bishop to f4, and Fischer plays pawn to g5. And this is where he gives Miguel a deadly dare. This was a new position, hasn't been played before, and you have to make a decision here. Interestingly, probably a couple of months, I don't have the exact date, but I imagine it was a game played after this one, but in the same year, Wolfgang Ullmann played it against Werner Goltz, and bishop to b5 check was played there. It's the top move recommended by the engine, and Wolfgang Ullmann won a great game. And I will show it to you, because here bishop to c1 was played, but bishop to b5 check is the best move, but it's an incredibly complicated one to play. Point being that why is Fischer inviting this bishop to b5 check move? Okay, let's say bishop. Maybe he wanted to play king to f8. I seriously doubt it. But if bishop to d7, just bishop captures on d6. Now, why would Fischer allow this position? You cannot castle. It doesn't seem like you have a move where there's a very forced line here. Bishop captures on b5, and now pawn to e5. This is what you have to find as white. Now queen to b6, and now okay, you will win your pawn back at some point, because if e captures on f6, then bishop captures on f6, knight captures on b5, queen captures on b5, and you stop the white king from castling. If queen to e2 check, forcing a queen trade, okay, you trade. Queen captures, king captures, and this is the position you have. It's equal material, but obviously it's Bobby who has this prepared. And if you don't go for e captures on f6 right away here, if you go for queen to c2, then many moves are possible, but the game just continues, and it's a really wild position where the white king is stuck in the center of the board. Whether you're going to castle queen side, it's hard to say, but this is what you have to do if you want to play this for a win with the white pieces. Very hard to calculate, and I don't even believe it's possible to calculate this. It's such a disgusting position. So Miguel goes back with the bishop. He plays bishop to c1, and Fischer just castles. And okay, if you didn't take advantage of the position, then now you just have an equal position against Fischer. Knight to d2, we have knight b to d7, and bishop to e2. And Fischer goes for the center. Knight to e5, and knight to f1, preparing to bring the knight to g3, to add more support to the e4 pawn, and also to maybe control the f5, h5, maybe the knight even comes to f5 at some point. This is the idea. idea. But Fischer has a very clear idea of what he wants to do, and it's not easy to find this move, but if you're a Benoni player, I'm sure you're gonna have a much easier time. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that allows Fischer to play for advantage here while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this very nice maneuver, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is pawn to b5. That's the move you play. And the question is, can the pawn be captured? Or should you allow pawn to b4? Or should you stop it with pawn to a3? Well, if you allow pawn to b4, then this pawn becomes weak. So let's say you just defend this. You want to play knight to g3 either way. Well, then the idea is b4, and when the knight moves, you still capture on e4. It's a piece sacrifice, but one that will be very hard to stop from advancing. Knight to g3, pawn to f4, and after, let's say, knight moves, pawn to g4, and good luck surviving this. You have the knight here, the pawns are marching forward, the queen is coming to h4. This is as good as lost for white. So after b5, okay, you have to decide, do you not allow it? Do you play knight captures? Well, if you play knight captures, then remember, your e4 pawn is hanging, and you don't want to give up the e4 pawn for the b5 pawn. That's just silly. The more central pawn is more important than the less central pawn. So, okay, bishop captures on b5. It's the best move, and it is the one that Miguel plays. We have queen to a5. Fischer now pins the knight, now threatens knight captures on e4, and knight to g3, just defending the pawn on e4. And now Fischer plays pawn to c4, and this is the idea behind Fischer's pawn sacrifice. He's saying, okay, what's your next move? I'm going to play knight to d3 check, and you will be in great trouble. So you have to castle. Castles is what Miguel goes for, and rook to b8. Now Fischer wants to play rook captures on b5. Just give up the rook for the bishop and knight. So okay, queen to a4, adding a defender, offering a queen trade, and Fischer goes for the trade. Queen captures on a4, bishop captures, and knight to d3. He gains the d3 square for his knight, and this is the position. Fischer is down a pawn, but he's playing the position that he wants to play. It's a very active one for the price of one pawn, and probably one that he knows how to handle a lot better. And there are many moves that you could consider here. There's no bad move. You can play h3, you can play knight back to d1, you can play rook to b1 to prepare the advancement of the b pawn. In the game, bishop to b5 was played, simply with the threat of bishop captures on c4, and Fischer played knight to g4 here. There's also the idea of, let's say, knight captures on d5. Knight captures on d5 is very nice tactically, because, well, if the knight captures, you just remove the defender of the bishop here, and if the pawn captures, again, you play bishop captures on c3, remove the defender of the bishop on b5, and just have a very good game. But the main idea being that knight captures on d5, you can play bishop captures on c4, and now knight captures on c3. Bishop captures on d3, and now knight to a4. You have to move the knight, put pressure on the b2 pawn, and you will win your pawn back. Let's say rook to b1, knight captures on b2, attacks the bishop, bishop moves, and it's equal material, but, you know, again, I guess a position that Fischer knew how to play a lot better than anyone else. So instead, he went for knight to g4. Obviously, he decided this line was better, and we have knight g back to e2. Again, bishop captures on c4 is the main idea here. You have to go for it. Then let's say knight captures, bishop captures, and rook a to c1. You defend the knight and hope for the best. But in the game, knight captures on knight g4, knight g to e2 was played. Now comes knight captures on c1. Fischer just eliminates one of the bishops, thus maintaining his own bishop pair. Rook a captures on c1, and now knight back to e5, defending on c4, and again with options of maybe bringing the knight to d3. And you always have to be mindful of the bishop on b5. The knight on c3 cannot move. So here, pawn to b3. Finally, going after this strong c4 pawn, c captures, a captures, and pawn to a6. Fischer gets rid of the bishop on b5, bishop to a4, and now finally knight to d3. There's no more pawn on c4 to support the knight, but it is no longer needed. We have rook to c2 as the rook on c1 was attacked, and now pawn to f5. It's amazing how Fischer never played a passive game. He always found a way to play actively. He either found a way to play actively or he sacrificed material to play actively, either a pawn or a piece, but he always played fighting chess. He always played active moves. We have knight to g3, putting pressure on the f5 pawn. And now, well, this is not the best move. You should just continue development. Rook to d1, attack the knight. Once the knight moves, then you go for something like knight to d4, and you play like that. But after knight to g3, inviting those pawns forward is not the way to go. Fischer played pawn to f4, knight g to e2, and now even pawn to f3. Knight back to g3, f captures on g2, king captures, and now bishop to g4. And again, a very, very difficult position here. There are no good moves for white here. There are only not as bad moves, but here you have to play, let's say, knight to d1. Knight to d1 is a nice move, or knight to b1, but here knight to f5 was played, and now Fischer's position is completely winning. Obviously, his strategy paid off. He completely confused Miguel, or maybe he was very, very low on time. I have no insight on clock times here, but now position is completely winning for Fischer. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Bobby while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this very nice idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, yes, you are winning a full piece. That is knight to f4 with check. You could also play rook captures on f5. It's the same line basically, but different move order. Knight to f4 with check. And now the point is, if the king goes to h1, it's a matter of a simple bishop f3 check, king g1, and knight to h3 checkmate. So you cannot go there. You have to go forward. King to g3 or king to g1, but it doesn't matter. The same moves will follow. King g3, bishop captures on f5. That's the reason why the knight never belonged there. You cannot allow Fischer this valuable tempo. E captures on f5, and now bishop captures on c3, and now you finally realize the horror of what you've done. If rook captures, then knight e2 check picks up the rook, and you're just going to be down too much material. And let's say king g2, knight captures on c3. Fischer would end this variation by being up a full rook. So after bishop captures on c3, king to f3 was played, but now Fischer just goes back, bishop to e5, and he's now up a full bishop. And, well, best Miguel can hope for is to maybe confuse Fischer a little bit. Maybe if he can get his king like to g6 and start, stirring some trouble here. But Fischer has too many defenders. It doesn't look very likely. We have king to e4, rook to b4 check. We have rook to c4, and now Fischer just doubles up on the b file. Pawn to f6, maybe preparing king f5, but now king f7. Fischer doesn't care about the rooks here. He will react if needed. We have king to f5, and only now rook captures on c4. B captures, and knight to e2. Going after a check to get rid of the king from such an active square. Rook to e1, and knight to d4 check. King g4, pawn to h5 check. Fischer again being tricky. If you capture here, then it's knight f3 check, winning the rook. And if you capture here, then rook to h8 with check, and well, that white king will not have a good time. So king h3 was played. Here king captures on f6 was played, and he was in this position on move 41 that Miguel Cuellar Gacharna resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. He's down too much material. He's down a full piece, and there's no good way. Well, no good way to continue this. What's a move you could even play? It's it's impossible to even play a move like, let's say rook c1. You want to play c5, like g4 already is coming. The bishop is here, the knight is here. The rook can easily go into the game. So it would be pointless. There's no move that you could even try playing here for white. It's that bad. So yeah, very nice victory for Fischer against the Colombian master Miguel Cuellar Gacharna. Like I said, very, very strong player, but as usual against Fischer, everyone falls at some point. And yeah, it's so inspiring seeing how Fischer plays active chess. He just gives up a pawn at free up a diagonal to free up that one outpost for the knight to get the rooks into the game. Very, very inspiring play. And if you guys enjoy active chess, you definitely want to study Fischer's games, as he always sacrifices something for activity. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, we will show one more game, and it's one against Bobby's old friend, Robert Byrne. He played some very nice games against him. One is particularly famous. But yeah, that's the game we're going to end the tournament with, and you guys will enjoy it. No doubt about that. And we will also discuss what happened at the tournament at great length, and why Fischer left. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Benjamin Nethercott, Andy Flint, Uzi Shalev, Michael Hoff, and James Eugene Cashman for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. To really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.